Some wounds don't come from screaming. They don't come from betrayal. They don't come from violence. They come from being unseen, from having your presence overlooked, your truth ignored, your light dismissed, from spending years speaking quietly and realizing no one ever really listened. Do you remember sitting at the dinner table with people you love, but no one asking, how are you really feeling proud of something you did, and watching the moment fall flat in the silence, carrying your joy, your sorrow, your magic, and realizing no one met your eyes when you tried to share it? Not because you were invisible, but because they never truly saw you. Carl Jung called it the shadow. He wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. What we hide does not disappear. It retreats. It waits. The parts of you that were too bright, too sensitive, too real, you tucked them away. Not because they were wrong, but because the world didn't make room for them. Maybe they said you were too emotional, so you learned how to numb. Maybe they said you talked too much, so you learned how to stay quiet. Maybe they didn't say anything at all, just gave you that look, the one that taught you to shrink. And you did, little by little, to stay loved, to stay safe, to survive. You became who they needed, who the world applauded. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being who you are. That quiet ache you still feel in crowded rooms, in silent mornings, in your own reflection, it's the inner child in you. Still waiting to be seen. Not fixed, not rescued. Seen. Because being seen isn't the same as being watched. Being seen is someone noticing the tremble in your voice when you say you're fine. It's someone hearing the silence between your words and understanding what wasn't spoken. It's someone witnessing your soul without asking it to change. And maybe no one ever did that for you. Maybe no one knew how. But you can start. Today. Now. You can be the one who finally says, I see you. Jung had a technique called active imagination, and it's more powerful than it sounds. Try this. Sit in stillness. Close your eyes. Imagine the younger version of you walking into the room. How old are they? What do they look like? Are they cautious? Curious? Do they trust you? Now don't rush to parent them. Don't rush to fix anything. Just sit with them. Just see them. Let your presence say the words no one ever said. You don't have to earn this. You matter just as you are. I've missed you, and I'm here now. You can also try mirror work. Yes, it might feel strange at first, but it's not about vanity. It's about visibility. Look at yourself, not your flaws, not your face. Look into your own eyes and speak directly to the one inside. I see you. The child in you who waited years for someone to say that they'll hear it. And maybe they'll believe it. You can also write a letter, not to give advice, not to analyze, just to listen. Ask, what do you want me to know? And wait for the answer. Maybe it's a memory from second grade when you were left out on the playground. Maybe it's the night you cried alone into your pillow, pretending everything was okay. Maybe it's something you thought you forgot because it hurt too much to carry. But now, you're strong enough to hold it, soft enough to stay, and that is how healing begins. Jung once said, the greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents, and so often children grow up unseen because the people who raised them were never truly seen either. The wound becomes generational, not because anyone meant harm, but because no one knew how to stop the silence. But you do. You can end it right here, right now, gently, not with anger, not with blame, but with eyes that finally see the parts of you that were hidden for decades. Whisper it. I haven't forgotten you. I've just been surviving. But I'm here now. I see you. And maybe, just maybe, after years in the dark, that younger you will step into the light, not to prove anything, not to perform, just to be. And sometimes that is the most healing thing in the world. If this touched something in you, leave a comment below. I saw the shadow. Not for me, but for you. And for someone else out there, still waiting to be seen. There's a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It lives deeper. It hums beneath conversations, beneath laughter, beneath the way you carry yourself in a room full of people, but still feel like a ghost. Maybe you felt it, that quiet ache, that sense that no matter where you go, you're somehow always outside the circle. Not rejected, just not invited in. You're there, but never really there. Carl Jung believed that much of our suffering comes from what we exile within ourselves. The parts we cut off just to survive, just to fit in. He called the path back to wholeness individuation, a returning to what you were before you were told what to be. Because you weren't born feeling like you didn't belong. That was learned. In classrooms where your curiosity was too much. In families where your quietness was too little. In places where your full self didn't fit the mold, so you trimmed yourself down. Again, and again, and again, until you forgot what it felt like to be whole. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, "Do they see me?" and started asking, "What do I need to hide to stay here?" That's not belonging. That's self-abandonment. But the beautiful, brutal truth is this: you can't belong anywhere until you belong to yourself first. So if you've always felt like you were too different, too emotional, too deep, too sensitive, too much, please hear this. You are not too much. You were just in places that asked you to be less. Jung once wrote, "The self is not only the center, but the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality." That means you were never meant to belong by shrinking. You belong when you include all of yourself, even the awkward parts, even the wild parts, even the ones you were told to leave behind. There's a practice I return to, often simple but profound. Sit in silence. Place your hand over your heart, not to say anything, just to feel the rhythm that's been with you since before the world told you who to be. And then whisper, "I'm here. I belong in this moment, in this breath, in this body." Even if you don't fully believe it yet, say it like you're learning to come home. There's a Jungian archetype called the orphan. Not literally abandoned, but spiritually forgotten. They move through life feeling separate, always looking for the place where they'll finally be enough, where they can rest, where they can just be. But here's the truth. The orphan, when embraced, becomes the seeker. And the seeker always finds their way home. Not by being accepted everywhere, but by accepting themselves fully. So if you've spent your life trying to belong, and still feel like you haven't found the place, it might be time to stop searching outward and turn inward. Try this. Close your eyes. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a quiet forest. The trees behind you are filled with all the places you tried to fit in, all the people you performed for, all the masks you wore to stay loved. Ahead of you, an open path, soft earth, golden light. No crowd, no performance, just space. And you walk, not toward anyone else, but toward yourself. Because belonging doesn't begin when others accept you. It begins when you reclaim the parts of yourself you once silenced and say, "You too. You are welcome here." Even the parts that still hurt, even the parts that still feel outside, especially those. Coming home to yourself doesn't mean you'll never feel lonely again, but it means you'll never be a stranger to your own soul. And that is the deepest kind of belonging. If this spoke to something hidden inside, you don't keep it silent. Let it breathe. Leave a comment. "I belong to myself." Then save this video. Not just to remember, but to return to, whenever the world makes you forget. And if this message found you in a moment you needed it, subscribe. Not out of habit, but as a way of saying, "I choose to come home to myself again and again." We'll walk this path together. There's a part of you that's still holding its breath. You smile. You function. You get through the day. But beneath all of it, there's a quiet tension. The sense that something bad might happen at any moment. You may not even notice it, because it's always been there. The tightness in your chest, the heaviness in your shoulders, the way you scan the room without realizing you are, the way you prepare yourself just in case someone withdraws, lashes out, or changes the rules. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you were trained by fear, not in some obvious dramatic way, but in subtle moments, moments no one else saw, like when you cried and were told to stop being so sensitive, when you needed comfort and were met with silence, when you expressed fear and were made to feel weak. Maybe it wasn't big, maybe it wasn't loud, but it shaped you, and that shape it stayed in your body. Carl Jung once said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." When we don't feel safe enough to fully feel what we feel, the mind creates substitutes, armor, patterns, complexes, because the real thing, grief, fear, vulnerability, was too dangerous to show. So the child inside of you found another way, a quieter way, a way that could survive. You learned to be prepared, to overfunction, to be agreeable, reliable, responsible even when you were exhausted. You learned to manage other people's moods, to feel the shift in the air before anyone said a word, to walk on eggshells so no one exploded. You became someone others could lean on. But deep down, you were never held. And now, years later, that version of you still lives inside. That small, bracing child, waiting for the next disappointment, the next explosion, the next loss. Even if your life is calm now, even if you're safe on paper, your body still doesn't know. Because the body doesn't keep score like a calendar. It remembers through sensation, through habit, through the way your breath shortens when someone raises their voice, even if they're not angry at you, through the way you flinch just a little when someone gets too close, through the way your hands tremble when you're asked to be seen. You don't need to shame this. You don't need to rush past it. You just need to notice that this fear, this tension, isn't who you are. It's who you had to be to stay safe. And now, you're allowed to choose something else. Start small. So small the ego won't fight it. Place your hand over your heart. Feel it beating. Don't say anything. Just notice. Right now, I'm alive. Right now, I'm here. It doesn't need to be forever. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be this moment. Because healing doesn't happen in the future. It happens in now. Your nervous system doesn't need logic. It needs rhythm, repetition, consistency, something it can learn to trust. Create a ritual, not for productivity, but for repatterning. Maybe it's the way you make tea, or how you light a candle every night before sleep, or how you hum softly to yourself when no one's around. Little moments that say, we are not in that house anymore. We are not in that classroom anymore. We are not waiting to be punished. We are here now, and it is safe to breathe. Jung encouraged us to meet the unconscious with imagination. So here's something to try. Close your eyes. Picture your inner child not as a metaphor, but as a real presence. See them hiding under a table behind a door curled up on the floor. Don't pull them out. Don't tell them it's fine. Kneel beside them, quietly, gently. Extend your hand and whisper, I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. You're safe now. And then say nothing. Let silence be the medicine. Let presence be the message. Maybe they won't trust you right away. Maybe they've heard this before. But if you keep showing up softly, honestly, patiently, something begins to shift. That frozen part in you starts to melt. That watchful child starts to blink in the light. That bracing breath becomes a soft exhale. This is how healing happens. Not in big breakthroughs, but in quiet returns. Not through control, but through consistency. One breath at a time. One moment of stillness at a time. You don't need to force yourself to be confident. You don't need to fake ease. You only need to say, truthfully, tenderly, I know you're scared, but I'm not abandoning you. And that child inside you, the one who's waited for decades to feel that, will finally start to believe it. It's not your fault that you still flinch, that you still prepare for the worst, that you still don't fully relax even when nothing's wrong. That's not weakness, that's memory. And memories don't need to be erased. They need to be held until they soften. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So if your body still expects pain, still expects to be left ignored, hurt, don't shame it, don't fight it. Speak to it, gently. Let it know that was then, and this is now. And now you're safe. You are not crazy for being hyper-aware. You are not dramatic for needing peace. You are not weak for wanting softness. You are just someone who lived through too much with too little care. And you are finally beginning to care for yourself in the way no one ever did. That is not regression. That is transformation. It's exhausting, isn't it? The striving, the shape-shifting, the subtle calculations you've made for years just to feel like you're worthy. You became responsible, capable, smart, predictable, strong. And yet, somewhere deep down you still wonder, am I enough? Even now, even after everything. Carl Jung called the roles we wear the persona, a necessary mask, one that helps us function in the world. But what happens when the mask becomes the only face we remember? You may not even realize it, but you've been performing for so long. You've forgotten who you were, before the applause, before the expectations, before you learned that love had rules. Maybe it started young. Maybe it was subtle. A raised eyebrow when you were messy. A disappointed look when you said the wrong thing. The praise you got when you were perfect, and the silence when you weren't. You learned quickly, love wasn't unconditional. Affection had terms. Attention had a cost. And so, you started becoming who they needed you to be. You became the fixer, the achiever, the peacemaker, the one who always smiled. And people loved that version of you. They celebrated it. They depended on it. But did anyone ever love you underneath it? Did anyone ever say, you don't have to earn this. You don't have to be good today to be worthy. You don't have to hold it all together for us to stay. If no one did, you're not alone. So many adults carry the invisible weight of a childhood where love was inconsistent, where affection was tied to achievement, and safety came from pleasing everyone else. But now the performance is wearing thin. You can feel it. In the fatigue that doesn't go away, in the smile that's harder to hold, in the resentment that leaks out when no one's watching, in the aching silence after the praise fades and you're still alone with yourself. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can you become that when you've spent your whole life becoming what others needed? You don't need more motivation. You don't need to push harder. You don't need to fix anything. You just need to return. To the child inside who never got to be fully themselves. To the part of you that existed before the roles, before the filters, before the world asked you to perform. You are enough. Not because you've accomplished something. Not because someone says you are. Not because you're trying really hard. You are enough because you exist. Let that settle for a moment. I am enough because I exist. Not because I'm useful. Not because I'm agreeable. Not because I'm doing everything right. But simply because I am. That's it. That's the truth your inner child never heard. So, let's say it now, and not just with your voice. Say it with your presence, with your stillness, with the way you sit beside yourself without judgment. Try this. Stand in front of a mirror, not to fix your hair, not to examine your flaws, just to see. Look into your eyes, not the tiredness, not the age, but the you behind all of it, and say gently out loud, I am enough, even if your voice shakes, even if it feels untrue, even if you hear that old voice in your head whispering otherwise. Say it again, I am enough, even when I feel empty, even when I'm tired, even when I don't know what I'm doing. I am still enough. You can also write a letter from your inner child to you. Let them speak. Let them say all the things they wish someone had told you. You were never too much. You were never wrong for feeling so deeply. You were never supposed to hold all that pain alone. I love you even when no one else stayed. I love you even when you can't feel it yet. Let those words come. Let them be messy. Let them be real. And if you feel grief, good. That's the proof that the mask is cracking, that something true is trying to come forward. Because you were never meant to perform forever. You were meant to live, fully, imperfectly, honestly. Jung often spoke of the inner marriage, the reunion of the hidden self with the outer self. And that reunion begins here, in these quiet moments, when you let the child within say, "You don't have to keep pretending anymore. Just stay. Just be. Just breathe. You are not broken. You are just tired of pretending to be someone else." And underneath all the striving, all the roles, all the survival strategies, there is still someone who wants to be held, not for what they do, but for who they are. And that someone is you. You are enough. Not because someone finally said it, but because you've remembered it for yourself, and that changes everything. Some wounds never got closure. No apology, no conversation, no acknowledgement, just silence. And in that silence, you learned to carry the weight alone, not because you were ready, but because no one showed up. And so, you held it. The confusion, the shame, the unanswered questions. Why didn't you protect me? Why did you leave me alone with this? What did I do? That made me so easy to forget. Sometimes you tried to forget. Sometimes you told yourself it wasn't that bad. Sometimes you even blamed yourself, because blaming yourself felt less painful than admitting the people you needed failed you. Carl Jung said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." Many of us were raised by people who were still wounded children themselves, who never felt seen, who never learned to hold pain without passing it on. So when we were hurting, they didn't know how to respond. When we needed presence, they gave performance. When we cried, they shamed, or ignored, or turned away. Not always out of malice, but out of unconsciousness. But here's the thing that doesn't make it okay. It doesn't erase what it did to you. The scar is still there, even if you've smiled over it for years. Even if you've achieved, succeeded, moved on. There's still a younger version of you, waiting, holding on to a truth no one else was willing to speak. Maybe it comes up at night, when you're finally still, when the masks are off and the performance ends, and you feel it, that ache, that fury, that longing to scream, "Why didn't you come for me?" Forgiveness doesn't mean that what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It doesn't mean the story didn't matter. Forgiveness means you're finally ready to stop bleeding for someone else's wound. You may still be carrying anger, good. You're allowed to. You may still be grieving, of course. You're human. But the child in you deserves more than survival. They deserve release. So how do we begin? Maybe with a letter, not to send, just to write. A letter to the person who hurt you, or to the one who never showed up, or to the part of yourself that still doesn't know how to let go. Don't filter it. Don't be polite. Say what you've never said. "I was a child. You should have seen me. You should have stayed. I didn't deserve that." And when the letter is complete, when the grief and rage are on the page, add this line, "I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. So I can finally be free." Jung didn't see forgiveness as passive. He saw it as a kind of alchemy, a transmutation of pain into presence. The shadow brought into light. The wound no longer hidden but held. You can also close your eyes and imagine holding your inner child. Maybe they're crying. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they don't trust you yet. That's okay. Wrap your arms around them and whisper, "I'm sorry you had to carry this. It wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve to be ignored, or silenced, or blamed. I see your pain, and I'm not leaving you this time." Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. For not knowing, for not leaving sooner, for not fighting back, for trying to be perfect just to be loved. But you were doing your best, with what you had, in a world that didn't make it easy. Forgive the child in you who kept performing to avoid punishment. Forgive the teen in you who rebelled because they didn't know how to ask for help. Forgive the adult in you who keeps repeating patterns, not because they want to, but because they've never known anything else. Say it again, not with guilt, not with shame, but with softness. "I forgive you. Not because everything's okay now, but because I don't want to carry this anymore. Because the life ahead of me can't grow in soil full of resentment. Because the child in me deserves joy, not just survival. You don't have to reconcile with the people who hurt you. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to understand why they did it. You only need to choose to stop giving your peace away to someone else's silence, to stop reliving a past that never gave you closure. You're not forgiving them. You're freeing yourself. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And this forgiveness is a choice to come back to yourself, without bitterness, without the armor, without the story that says I am what they did to me. You're not. You are who you become when you stop dragging their story into your future. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a spiral. Some days you'll feel peace. Other days the old ache returns. That's normal. But each time you meet it with compassion instead of resistance, you rewrite the memory. You rewire the nervous system. You bring your soul home. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. You deserve softness. You deserve to stop flinching when the past knocks on your door. Let this be the quiet revolution, not a loud declaration, not a grand release. Just a whisper from your deepest truth. I am done carrying this. I am ready to live. I am ready to let go. There's a fear you might not talk about because even admitting it feels too raw. It's not the fear of being hurt. You've survived that. It's not the fear of being alone. You've mastered that too. It's the fear of being seen, truly, clearly, without filters, roles, or control. The kind of being seen that leaves no mask to hide behind. No cleverness, no strength, no performance. Just you. And the terrifying question, if they really saw me, would they still stay? Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's where it begins. Not with being seen by others, but with being seen by yourself. Because if you've spent years hiding parts of who you are, you didn't do it out of shame. You did it to stay safe. Maybe the world responded badly to your softness, or mocked your sensitivity, or couldn't understand the way you love with your whole being. And little by little, you learn truth is dangerous. Depth is too much. Presence gets you hurt. So you turned yourself down. One emotional decibel at a time. You became someone they could accept. But in doing so, you lost the version of you that could breathe freely. Jung believed that within each of us lives an inner opposite, a divine counterbalance. In women, it's called the animus, the sacred masculine. In men, it's the anima, the sacred feminine. These inner energies, when unacknowledged, become projections. We search for them in others. We fall in love with reflections of what we've buried. So if you've ever found yourself longing for someone to see you, to understand you, to love you as you are, it may not have just been about them. It may have been your own soul reaching through them, asking you to return. And life has a way of orchestrating this. Jung called it synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence, the sign. The moment that stops you mid-step and whispers, "Pay attention." The person who enters your life at the exact time you're ready to feel again. The book that falls off the shelf with the line that breaks your heart open. The stranger who says something. And suddenly, you remember who you are. These moments aren't random. They're invitations. Not to become someone new, but to reclaim someone forgotten. Maybe that's what you're being asked now. To come out of hiding. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gently. One truth at a time. One breath at a time. 1 inch closer to your own skin. There's no rush. Visibility doesn't have to be public. Sometimes it's just sitting with yourself fully present and saying, I no longer need to disappear to be safe. I no longer have to pretend in order to be loved. I no longer abandon myself just to be tolerated by others. Maybe the people in your life won't understand this version of you. Maybe they'll pull away, or get confused, or try to nudge you back into the mask that made them comfortable. That's okay. They're not your home. You are. And no one gets to evict you from yourself anymore. The anima and animus, when integrated, don't just give us balance. They give us wholeness, a rooted sense of self that no longer depends on reflection. You don't need someone else to say you're enough because you feel it in your bones. But to reach that place, you have to walk through the fear of being seen, to stand emotionally naked and say, "This is me, and I'm not here to perform for your approval. I'm here to live, fully, even if your voice trembles, even if you have to say it in a whisper just to yourself. Because real healing doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being real, messy, honest, whole. Try this. Sit in front of a mirror, or place your hands over your chest, your stomach, your face, anywhere you've abandoned in shame, and breathe. Then say quietly, "I want to see myself again. I want to meet the one I buried to make others comfortable. I'm ready to come back." Don't wait for the world to give you permission. You're the only one who can open that door. There is no shame in the way you protected yourself, in the way you dimmed your light to survive, in the way you kept your soul quiet because it felt too sacred to share. But you're allowed to return, not to prove anything, not to impress, just to be. Jung believed that individuation, becoming whole, isn't about changing. It's about remembering. Remembering the original self, the untouched soul, the light behind the armor. So if you feel fear right now, good. It means you're getting close. You're brushing up against the truth of who you are. And that truth is breathtaking. Not because it's flashy, but because it's undeniably yours. Be brave. Not in the way you were taught, not loud, not bold, but brave enough to be soft, brave enough to stay, brave enough to say, "I will not leave myself again just to be loved." Because when you stop hiding, you stop hurting. And when you finally stand in the light, you don't need anyone else to hold the mirror. You become it. There's a silence you reach after the storms inside you have quieted. Not the silence of emptiness, not the silence of giving up, but the kind of silence that feels like truth, like rest, like home. You've walked through shadows, spoken to the child no one else listened to, faced the loneliness of invisibility, told the truth behind the mask. And now you are here, not healed, not perfect, not done, just here. And that is more than enough. Carl Jung believed that the self is not just a part of us. It's the totality, the center and the whole circumference. Not only who we are, but everything we've ever been, and everything we're still becoming. We spend so much of life looking outward, for answers, for belonging, for permission to feel whole. But the moment you turn inward, truly inward, you realize, "I never left. I was always here. I just forgot how to listen." Healing doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't rewrite the past. It doesn't make you feel radiant every day, but it gives you something far more powerful. A place inside yourself where you no longer feel like a stranger, a steady ground beneath you, a soft voice within you, a mirror that reflects you without distortion. Jung often worked with the symbol of the mandala, a sacred circle, a visual representation of wholeness. He believed that when the psyche begins to heal, it starts creating these circular symmetrical patterns, as if the soul itself is drawing a map back home, not toward perfection, but toward integration. You are not just light, you are not just shadow, you are not just strength or softness or insight or longing. You are all of it woven into one breath, one body, one being. Try this, close your eyes, and imagine a circle. Inside that circle, everything you once tried to cut away. The part of you that cried too easily, the one who loved too deeply, the voice that spoke too soon, the silence that stayed too long, the anger you weren't allowed to have, the dreams you were told to bury. Place them all inside that circle, and instead of pushing anything out, just sit with it. Let it be there. Let it belong. Because it does. You were never meant to be only one version of yourself. You were meant to be many, and to hold them all with grace. That's not fragmentation. That's integration. That's the soul remembering itself. You might still feel fragile. You might still feel like some days are too much. You might still fall into old patterns. But the difference now is that you see yourself when it happens. You know how to return. You know the way back. This is home. Not a place, not a person, but a presence. A way of being with yourself that says, you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to exist without performance, without apology. When Jung spoke of the self, he wasn't talking about some higher version of you, but the one who's always been waiting behind the noise. The one who is quiet, but unshakable. The one who watches and witnesses and whispers, you don't need to prove anything. You've already arrived. I've been here the whole time. If you still ache, that's okay. Healing isn't a straight line. It curves. It spirals. It softens. You don't need to become a new person. You just need to come back. Again, and again, and again, until it no longer feels like returning, but like living. So now, take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. Let your heart slow. Let the silence settle. Not because you're done, but because there's nothing to chase anymore. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not too broken. You're simply remembering what the world taught you to forget, that you were always whole, that the inner child never left, that your softness is not your weakness, that your story is not your shame, and that being seen, truly seen, begins with you. You can build a life from this place, not by pretending to be confident, but by being present, not by hiding your shadow, but by integrating it, letting it speak, letting it soften. You don't need to fix your soul. You just need to sit with it until it feels safe again. This is not the end. This is the beginning, not of a journey outward, but inward, toward stillness, toward truth, toward wholeness. Let this be your quiet vow. I will no longer abandon myself. I will stay even when it's hard. I will trust the voice inside me even when no one else does. I will come home, not once, but as many times as it takes, and slowly, softly, without even realizing it. You will become the safe place you always needed,